Have you ever worked for a boss who micromanaged everything you did? Maybe they hovered over your every email, nitpicked your smallest mistakes, and made you feel like nothing you did was good enough? Well, I was in that exact situation, and I'm about to tell you how a toxic manager nearly destroyed my career and how I found the courage to walk away. But this isn't just a story about quitting, it's about standing up for yourself, reclaiming your worth, and finding peace after years of being controlled. Stick around because what happened next will leave you stunned. When I first got the offer from a rising marketing firm, I was thrilled. The pay was better than anything I'd earned before, the benefits were top notch, and the team seemed young, vibrant, and full of potential. During my interviews, they emphasized growth opportunities, creative freedom, and a healthy work life balance. It sounded like the dream job I'd been working toward for years. The first few days were exactly what I hoped for. My coworkers were friendly, onboarding was smooth, and I was excited to dive into projects. I genuinely believed I had landed somewhere I could finally build a long-term career. But that excitement didn't last long. Barely 2 weeks in, the cracks started to show. My direct manager, who had seemed so supportive during the interview process, revealed her true leadership style, full-blown micromanagement. She hovered over everything I did, checking every email draft before I could send it, asking me to copy her on every client conversation, and insisting I run every tiny decision past her first. It didn't matter that I had experience. It didn't matter that my ideas could have saved time or made campaigns better. If it wasn't her way, it wasn't the right way. There was no trust, no real collaboration. Just a constant stream of corrections, unnecessary approvals, and subtle digs about how new I was. At first, I told myself it was just a transitional phase, that maybe she just needed time to get comfortable with me. But weeks went by and it only got worse. She once made me redo a client presentation 3 times because she didn't like the shade of blue I used, even though it was the company's brand color. I started realizing that I hadn't been hired for my skills or fresh ideas. I was hired to be a puppet, someone to execute her every whim without question. The worst part? She framed it as mentorship. She would say things like, "I'm just setting you up for success," while systematically stripping away any shred of autonomy I had. It wasn't mentorship, it was control, plain and simple. The dream job I thought I had found was quickly turning into a nightmare, and deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. It didn't take long for the stress to start piling up. Every morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, dreading the thought of logging in. Where I used to be excited about work, about brainstorming new campaigns or finding creative solutions, now I just felt drained. My creativity, the very thing I was hired for, was slowly dying under the weight of constant scrutiny. At first, I tried to push through it. I told myself maybe it was just the adjustment period. Maybe if I proved myself a little more, she'd start trusting me. I started coming up with ways to streamline our workflow, ideas that could save us hours of back and forth emails and endless revisions. I carefully prepared my suggestions, backed them up with examples and data, hoping that maybe she'd see I wasn't trying to undermine her, just trying to help. But every time I spoke up, the answer was the same. We do things my way. No discussion, no openness to improvement, just a hard wall of stubbornness. Over time, the message became crystal clear. It didn't matter how good my ideas were. It didn't matter that I was capable of doing more. The only thing that mattered was control, her control over every tiny aspect of the team's work. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I had submitted a simple internal report, nothing major, just a weekly update on our ad performance. I formatted it neatly, used the company's standard fonts and colors, and sent it off, feeling confident that at least this was one thing that wouldn't trigger a dozen revisions. Less than 5 minutes later, I got a message. "Please redo this. You used the wrong font for the section headings." I stared at the screen, stunned. It wasn't a client-facing document. It wasn't even something that would be widely distributed. It was an internal update, something only our small team would even see. And yet, here I was, being scolded for using the wrong font, a font that, by the way, looked almost identical to the correct one. That was it for me. In that moment, I realized no amount of extra effort, creativity, or professionalism was ever going to be enough. No matter how small the mistake, no matter how minor the detail, I would always be treated like I couldn't be trusted to think for myself. This wasn't sustainable, not for my career and definitely not for my mental health. Something had to change, and soon. After that ridiculous font incident, something inside me shifted. I didn't quit right away. No dramatic exits, no angry emails. Instead, I made a quiet decision. If they wanted a puppet, that's exactly what they'd get. No more going above and beyond. No more late nights brainstorming ways to improve the team's workflow. No more suggesting better strategies or offering creative ideas that would just get shot down. From that point on, I would do exactly what was asked of me. No more, no less. If they wanted every email reviewed, fine. If they wanted unnecessary approvals for every tiny thing, no problem. I stopped trying to fix inefficiencies. I stopped taking initiative. I did my job exactly by the book, following every outdated, tedious process to the letter. At first, no one noticed. The machine kept grinding along. I attended meetings, sent reports, completed tasks exactly as instructed. I smiled and nodded during team calls. On the surface, everything looked fine, but the cracks were already forming. Without me quietly cleaning up behind the scenes, fixing last-minute mistakes, smoothing over client frustrations, preemptively solving problems, the gaps in our processes started to widen. A client received outdated campaign materials because my boss had delayed approvals for so long. A project missed its deadline because no one had noticed a bottleneck, something I would have flagged weeks earlier if I still cared. Team meetings grew longer and more chaotic because nobody felt empowered to make quick decisions anymore. And the best part, none of it could be traced back to me. I wasn't neglecting my duties. I was doing exactly what I was told. Nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, my boss, who had always prided herself on tight control, started to lose her grip. The micromanagement that once seemed so ironclad was now slowing everything down, exposing all the inefficiencies she had refused to acknowledge. It was almost surreal to watch it happen. I had spent so much time stressing over how to fix things, how to make life easier for the team. Now, I realized that by simply stepping back and letting the broken system fail under its own weight, I was doing more than I ever could have by trying to patch it up. I didn't need to fight. I didn't need to cause drama. All I had to do was stop saving a system that didn't deserve to be saved. And soon enough, other people started noticing too. It didn't take long before the problem snowballed into something bigger. Clients started complaining about missed deadlines and sloppy communication. Projects that should have been simple turned into confusing messes because nobody was empowered to make decisions without layers of unnecessary approvals. Upper management began to take notice. At first, my boss tried to cover it up, adding more meetings, tightening her grip even further, blaming communication breakdowns and team inexperience for the growing mess. But no amount of extra micromanaging could hide the fact that things were slipping, and fast. Then came the anonymous employee satisfaction survey. It was the first one we'd had since I joined, and the timing couldn't have been better. I, along with several others on the team, used the opportunity to be brutally honest. We wrote about the constant micromanagement, the stifling atmosphere, the lack of trust, and the inefficiency that had been baked into every process. Apparently, we weren't the only ones who spoke up. The results painted a clear picture, one that HR and upper management couldn't ignore. Meetings were scheduled, one-on-one interviews were held. HR wanted to know why our team, which had once been one of the company's most promising, was suddenly underperforming. When asked directly, I kept it professional. I didn't throw anyone under the bus. I didn't need to. I simply described how projects were handled, how decisions were bottlenecked, and how innovation was stifled at every turn. My coworkers shared similar stories. It became obvious where the real problem was coming from. At a department wide meeting a few weeks later, leadership announced some organizational changes. My boss was being reassigned to a new strategic role. Corporate speak for being removed from her position without a public firing. She didn't even say goodbye to the team. One day she was there, nitpicking my font choice, and the next, she was just gone. And for the first time in a long time, the office felt lighter. After my boss was quietly reassigned, everything changed almost overnight. Meetings became shorter and actually productive. People started stepping up with new ideas again. There was laughter in the break room. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off the entire team. With her gone, we were finally trusted to do the jobs we were hired for. Deadlines were met faster, clients were happier. The same group of people who had been labeled difficult and unreliable under her rule were now thriving without all the unnecessary oversight. At first, I thought maybe I should stay. Maybe things would be different now, better, the way they should have been from the start. But deep down, I knew the truth. Even though the environment had improved, the experience had changed me. I had spent months questioning my abilities, feeling anxious over meaningless details, and watching my love for my work slowly burn out. It wasn't something I could just forget. I realized I didn't want to settle for better. I wanted good, a place that valued creativity, independence, and trust from day one. So a few months later, after things stabilized, I gave my notice. No drama, no hard feelings, just a polite thank you, a clean handover, and a quiet exit. Now I work remotely for a small but growing company that actually means it when they talk about employee well-being. I am trusted to do my job without someone hovering over my shoulder. My ideas are listened to. When I do well, I'm not just rewarded, I'm appreciated. Looking back, it's wild how much stress and misery came from one person's need for control. But it taught me something important. If you find yourself shrinking in a workplace that doesn't trust you, it's not because you aren't good enough. It's because the environment isn't good enough for you. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. And honestly, there's no better revenge than finding peace, fulfillment, and pride in what you do, somewhere else. If you enjoyed this story and found it relatable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real life workplace journeys. Your support helps us bring more stories to life.